What's up, YouTube? It's Jerry Mason, the Kickin lawyer. Again, I'm going to talk this time about DUIs, driving under the influence, how not to get a DUI. So, the number one rule on how to avoid a DUI, pretty simple: don't drink and drive. Don't do drugs and drive. If you avoid doing that, then obviously you have a much lower probability of being arrested for a DUI. I'm going to give you an overview. I had some other lawyers tell me they thought the videos were a little long, but the purpose, my view on the videos is it gives somebody, I want this to be something that somebody who doesn't really have an understanding of what they're involved in, if it's a DUI or a data breach issue or whatever I'm doing the video on, and then they can look at this video and get some general information on at least a general understanding of what's happening in what could happen to them in that situation. Also, when I was a law student, I thought something like this would have been a great asset. I couldn't find anything that was at least semi fun to watch. So I'm trying to keep all the videos under like 10 minutes, but my plan is sort of give you an overview of what the subject matter involves, and then if you have specific questions, you can message me or our firm, or as I recommend, you go to find a licensed and competent lawyer in your area. I'm in a car today. I thought, waiting on my wife maybe to go to lunch, and I thought while I was out here, it'd be a good time to go over DUIs. So basically, also understand this, that the laws vary on DUIs per jurisdiction. So if you're in another state, I'm licensed in Tennessee. Our firm does practice in Arkansas, and the laws vary there some too on these issues. So it's again why it's so important that you don't take this as legal advice. This is just some general overview information. You need to seek out a licensed, competent attorney in your area, especially if you've been arrested for DUI. So, what is DUI? Well, in Tennessee, a DUI is driving under the influence. The legal limit in Tennessee is 0.08. That's the blood alcohol level limit. So if they took your blood and you were driving a vehicle and it comes back over 0.08, that's considered a statutory DUI or DUI per se. That's not good. So we're just going to go over just sort of how the process works from the cop's perspective. When I was a cop, I had a 100% conviction rate on DUIs. Now I'm on the other side, and hope to get a similar rate on helping people get off. But anyway, the way the DUI works is, so the first thing you would do if we were a defense lawyer on a DUI assumes that you're in operation or control of a vehicle somehow, is the police have to have some reason to stop you. They have to have either reasonable suspicion or probable cause at a minimum to stop you. That's a burden of proof, and I'll do a video on those later because in law school that initially was kind of confusing too. But anyway, so the cops have to have a reason to stop you, and the reason could be you're not wearing your seatbelt, you're speeding, you're swerving, anything like that. So another way to avoid a DUI would be to obey all traffic laws. Obviously, one would be don't drink and drive. Two, obey all traffic laws. If you do that, then obviously you're going to limit the police's ability to stop you, to ask you questions, or potentially arrest you for the DUI anyway. Another thing to consider on DUIs, now I'm not a scientist or anything, I'm not a doctor, so don't take this as gospel. But basically, when I was a cop, the way I looked at it was there's about an hour and a half to metabolize one drink of alcohol in your body. So what that means is if it's a normal sized beer, like a can of beer, or one shot of whiskey, or one glass of wine, it usually takes the body about an hour and a half to metabolize that. And then obviously the more you drink, the more it multiplies the effect. So what I'm getting at is a lot of people think, oh, I only had a couple. That's what they used to say when I was a cop. The cop would ask if you had anything to drink. The response was a couple. Well, a couple could take a while to metabolize. So, you might have had it a couple hours ago, and the cop's doing some loose math in their head, at least that's what I did, and kind of making a guesstimate on what your BAC level is at that time if you're driving the vehicle. So let's say that, the cop stops you for whatever reason. You were swerving, maybe they were suspected the DUI because you were swerving, you're speeding, whatever. So the next thing that's going to happen is the cop's going to immediately start gathering more information or more evidence against you. The initial evidence is evidence on the stop. Second thing they look at is the evidence when they interact with you. So when they come up to the car window here, they're going to be looking for additional cues and evidence that they can use against you. And they have a standard text they put, I did it, standard stuff they put in a their affidavits and police reports and the arrest report. It'll be language like slurred speech, bloodshot, watery eyes. They could detect an odor of an intoxicant coming from your person or your breath or something like that. That's all evidence they're going to gather against you. So, if you fumble for your license, that's evidence. Now, you got to understand that most people know that's a nerve-wracking situation. Cops know that when the police stop you, that's an awkward situation, right? You're uncomfortable, you're already nervous, so it's easy to make mistakes, like fumbling with your license and whatnot. But you got to understand that all those things accumulate together to be evidence they'll use against you if they want to charge you with, a DUI or whatever. Next thing they'll do is they may ask you to come out of the vehicle. They're going to observe how you get out of the vehicle, if you use the vehicle for balance, if you're stumbling and whatnot. And then usually soon after that comes, let me back up. So they will, of course, they may ask you a question, hey, you've been drinking tonight? And the response is usually a couple. Well, attorneys never advise you to lie at all. But you have to always remember that anything you say, they're going to use against you. Okay. I was a police officer for 12 years, and I was real good at seeming like everybody's buddy. I'd be their friend, but the whole objective was for me to get evidence to use against these people in court. So you got to keep that in mind when you answer any questions that they ask. So, obviously we would never tell you to lie, but you do need to be careful what you say, because if you start telling them you drink, a whole fifth of Jack Daniels, well, clearly that's not going to be a good sign for you. They'll also, on the contact on the vehicle, as they walk up, they're going to look for things like open container. Tennessee even has a statute that if a open container of alcohol is in reach of the driver, they'll charge you with that. They'll look to see, if there's a beer bottle or beer cans or a cooler or anything that would go along with supporting evidence that you'd been drinking and driving or coming from somewhere where you might have been drinking. All right, so let's say now they get you out. They decide they want to ask you to do the standardized field sobriety test. Well, in Tennessee, there's three main ones they do. Now, I did others, and I've had people call me as a lawyer and say, well, he did, this random test, some other. They can do whatever they want to do. They can ask you to do whatever they want to do. Like I used to do this dexterity test. It was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. Because based on my experience, I could determine pretty readily based on a couple of key tests, that old school tests that I had learned, whether it was even worth me doing the whole field sobriety check or not. And I'd have them count backwards, do the ABCs, things like that. So don't be surprised if some of them ask you some of that. But pretty much in Tennessee, there are three that they do. The first one's called the HGN. HGN is a horizontal gaze in nystagmus. Understand that, and all nystagmus is the involuntary jerking of the eyes. It's seen very commonly when there's alcohol or drugs present in the body. On the HGN, it's not admissible in court right now. However, based on my opinion, the HGN is probably the most accurate test of the three that they do to determine if alcohol is present in your body. So just keep that in mind. So HGN, they'll look and determine, whether you've got the jerking in the eyes or not. And they look for certain cues. All three of the field sobriety tests that they do, they're looking for certain cues that's evidence to show that you've got alcohol in your system and you're impaired. You're driving while impaired. That's another thing they have to prove, especially if you're under 0.08 on the blood level, is that you were actually impaired due to the alcohol level in your blood. So you were danger on the road. The next one is usually the 9-step heel to toe. There's certain cues they're looking for on that. They'll explain it to you, ask you some questions. They should ask you questions if you've got ankle problems, feet problems, hip problems, and if you do, tell them. Then the last one is the one-leg stand, and that they'll have you stand on one leg, legs usually raised 6 inches off the ground, toes flexed, and they may have you simulate 30 seconds to see if your perception of time is still accurate and hasn't been infringed any by the potential substances in your system. So they'll do that, and then they'll make a determination. And there were times I did field sobriety, and I let people go. And there were times when I did it, and it was clear evidence they needed to go to jail. So just keep that in mind, that the field sobriety is evidence against you. You do not have to take the field sobriety, okay? You can say, no, I don't want to take it. Or you can tell them, look, my hips are jacked up, I'm old, my legs broke, whatever. You can't take it, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of factors on the way they have to do the test and explain it to you that we as defense attorneys would use to try to get that evidence thrown out. There's also factors that would play into those tests hurting you. So, they can be good for you or bad for you. It just depends on you. I was, because of my martial arts background, was relatively coordinated, and I could usually do the test. Even when we do wet labs, I would get semi-intoxicated, and I could pass the tests, with the exception of HGN. I could pass the test even with a little intoxication. And I think a lot of that was due to my personal coordination. So everybody's different. All right, next thing is if they arrest you, they're going to ask you to sign or advise you of the Tennessee implied consent law. Each state, almost every state, has some kind of implied consent law now. Understand this, the implied consent laws are civil penalties, okay? So they will take your license for a year. Basically, they say that if you don't give blood, they will take your license for a year, all right? Now, there's things that we can do to try to get, some type of restricted license in some cases, but you're going to lose the license for a year, even if you beat the DUI under the implied consent law if you don't give blood. So, again, it's a balancing act. If you give blood, well, that's very solid evidence that you were driving impaired, especially if the blood comes back over 0.08, or if there's any presence of drugs. There's no limit on how much drugs are in your system. They just have to show that it's prima facie evidence maybe that there was some impairment. So, give blood, don't give blood. Again, that's sort of a weighing thing for you. If you know you've been drinking, obviously that evidence is going to be used against you. But you're going to lose your license for a year. DUI can carry some swift penalties. In Tennessee and most states. Oh, by the way, like Arkansas, the implied consent law only suspends a license for 6 months. Now, these are on DUI ones now. It changes when you get to multiple DUIs in almost every jurisdiction. So just keep that in mind. If you do get arrested for a DUI, obviously I highly recommend that you contact a licensed and competent attorney. Like I said, these DUIs can carry very difficult and burdensome penalties because you're looking at not only jail time and fines, but the license issue is a huge deal. If you're trying to work or take your kids somewhere and you lose a license, man, that makes it hard. It's just a spiral down for these DUIs. They are beatable. DUIs are beatable. Our firm has had some success. There's lots of firms that are pretty good at handling, DUI offenses. Everyone is unique and different, and again, that's why you should seek your own legal counsel. No matter what, though, if you're charged with something like that, make the government hold its burden. That's why I'm always big on fighting for your rights. You got to stand up and fight for what you want to do. Do me a favor. This video has gotten a little longer than I wanted it to. If you've enjoyed it or it's been beneficial to you, please like and subscribe to the channel for me. Please feel free to leave comments too, especially if you're like a law student. Like, I'm curious to see how many law students might watch this stuff to kind of get an overview before class, because I know how you have to crash sometimes before you read those big long cases. And as always, you can send me messages if you have specific questions. And hey, let me know below too if there's something you would like me to do a video on. I'm more than happy. I'm trying to do one a week on just different stuff that's sort of in place. We just had Super Bowl Sunday. Today's Tuesday, so I thought that this might be appropriate post Super Bowl. Some people might have some interest in it. So call us at the law firm at the number below. Like and subscribe. See you guys later.